Let's talk about the secret weapon behind pretty much any successful coaching relationship. It's called the agreement, or the contract. And honestly, it's one of those things that seems so basic, but it's often overlooked. It's where everything can go right or terribly wrong.
But before we dive deep into coaching, let's start with a question you've probably asked yourself before. Have you ever been part of a project or a partnership that started with all this amazing energy and the best of intentions, but somewhere along the line, it just fizzled out or completely fell apart? Why does that happen so often?
Well, it almost always boils down to this distinction right here. On one side, you've got what you could call accidental success. That's basically just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. But on the other side, you have intentional success, and that is built on the rock-solid foundation of a shared agreement. That's where the real magic happens.
Okay, so let's bring this idea into the world of coaching. Because even when you have a fantastic coach and a super motivated client, things can still go completely sideways. So what's really happening when good coaching goes wrong? Here's the thing. The problem usually isn't about a lack of skill or a lack of effort. Nope. The real root cause is almost always the invisible stuff, the assumptions we never talk about and the expectations that are just totally out of whack with each other.
And this is what it actually looks like in real life. The coach starts to feel frustrated, thinking the client just isn't performing. Meanwhile, the client feels completely lost. They're not even sure what's expected of them. Or maybe the client thinks the coach is supposed to be some kind of guru with all the answers. The end result, boundaries get crossed, everybody's disappointed, and the whole relationship takes a hit.
So how in the world do we stop this from happening? Well, we get proactive. We harness the power of the agreement. This is the antidote to all that potential frustration.
Now, the formal term for this is contracting, but I want you to be really clear. We are not just talking about some stuffy legal document. Contracting is the process. It's the conversation you have to build a shared understanding about what's going to happen and how you're going to work together. It's really the foundation of everything.
So what does this process actually do for you? Well, it does three really important things. First, it makes sure everyone is on the same page about their roles and what success looks like. Second, it creates a clear structure. We're talking goals, methods, timelines, the whole shebang. And third, and this is really cool, the process itself actually models what coaching is all about: asking questions, being open, and making commitments.
Honestly, it all comes back to this classic piece of advice from Stephen Covey. You have to begin with the end in mind. A good contracting process forces both the coach and the client to do exactly that, right from the very first conversation.
Okay, so if we're all agreeing to begin with the end in mind, how do we actually do that? How do we build this roadmap? It's time to get practical. Let's break down the essential toolkit for a strong coaching agreement, the 15 key elements. 15. I know, that number might sound a little intimidating, but trust me, they're broken down into these really logical groups, and they cover all the bases so there are absolutely no nasty surprises down the road. Let's walk through them.
So this first chunk is all about just setting the stage. These are the fundamentals. We're answering questions like, who exactly is the client? How are we going to know if we're making progress? How long is this going to last? How often are we meeting? And hey, is there any other work involved, like talking to other people? Getting these nailed down stops that whole, I don't know what's expected of me, feeling right in its tracks.
All right, next up, and this one is absolutely crucial for building trust, is defining the boundaries. This means getting crystal clear on things like confidentiality. It also means spelling out what coaching is and, just as importantly, what it is not. It's not therapy. It's not consulting. This is how you avoid those crossed wires where a client just expects you to hand them all the answers.
And finally, we have the part that structures the whole process. Think of this as the how we work together part. The real nuts and bolts. Are we meeting in person, on the phone? What does a typical session feel like? How are we going to give each other feedback? Agreeing on this stuff up front is what keeps a coach from feeling like a client isn't performing, when really, the rules of the game were never clear to begin with.
So after going through all those pieces, you can see this is so much more than just a piece of paper you sign and then file away, right? This is a living, breathing part of the coaching relationship. I mean, sometimes a coaching relationship is pretty straightforward. You've got the coach and you've got the client. The conversation is a simple one-to-one dialogue. Easy enough.
But let's be real, especially inside a company, things get complicated fast. Suddenly you might have the client's manager involved, or maybe the HR department, or even an outside company that brought the coach in. Each one of these is a stakeholder, and they all have their own expectations that need to be managed.
And that is exactly why contracting is an art just as much as it's a science. It's not about checking boxes. It's a dynamic human process. It takes real skill, sensitivity, and the flexibility to know that sometimes you've got to revisit the agreement and make adjustments along the way.
Because at the end of the day, a contract is just paper. It's the trust that makes it work. And Stephen M. R. Covey's framework here is perfect for this. The client is always, even subconsciously, asking these questions of the coach. Are you credible? What's your real agenda here? Do you actually have the skills to help me? And what kind of results have you gotten before? A great contracting process answers these questions before they're even asked.
Okay, so let's tie all of this together. This isn't just about doing paperwork for the sake of process. This is about deliberately contracting for everyone's success.
Here is the bottom line, and it is so important. The little bit of extra time you invest in creating this clear, shared understanding right at the beginning will save you a massive amount of headache, misunderstanding, and frustration later on. It just will.
You know, there's this perfect analogy from that old Fram oil filter commercial. It was, you can pay me now or pay me later. You can either invest the time and effort now to do it right, or you will absolutely pay a much bigger price down the road when things go wrong.
And remember this final, crucial piece. This is not just the coach's job. When you do contracting well, it completely transforms the relationship. It becomes a shared responsibility. It creates a joint commitment, and it turns my goal or your goal into our goal.
So I want to leave you with a question to think about, not just about coaching, but about everything you do. Look around at your own work, your teams, your partnerships. Where could a clearer, more intentional agreement be the one key that unlocks your next level of success?